Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat, and right off the bat I want to apologize that this show's so late. Unfortunately, we've had some scheduling problems. Gary's been having to do a lot of extra work at his day job, with it being Mother's Day weekend. We both had other things we're doing, and we do apologize. We like to get these in time. This is our TNA show, basically for Thursday night, and I'm going to get right into it. I'm sorry Gary's not here today. My name is George Coles, and this is Heel Heat, so let me go right into the show. First thing of the night, we had Sting and Kurt Angle trying to recruit AJ Styles into being a teammate with him to fight off against Aces and Eights later on in the show. Sting tried to talk to him, say, I know where you've been, I was there, basically saying about the NWO, which is what we've been saying all along. Kurt Angle gets frustrated, AJ walks out, Aces and Eights comes out, beats him down. We see the 3D on a Sting, which anytime we get to see a 3D is always good. I liked it as an opening segment, set up the main event for the night really well in my opinion. Now the next match was a Divas Tag Team match, or Knockouts Tag Team match. Tara and Gail Kim versus Mickey and Velvet. Mickey James and Velvet Sky, that is. I liked it. I thought it was a decent match. I would have liked better to see a singles match with either of these four competitors. I think they're wasting a little bit too much time with knockout tag team matches. Some Divas singles matches would be nice, in my opinion. Next we got the next segment. Tara and Gail end up losing, which caused a little ruckus after the thing. The next segment we have Aces and Eights talking about what they're going to do with D'Lo Brown. Now, if you watched last week's show, D'Lo lost a match where he basically said, if I lose, I'll give up my colors. They talked about what he could do, how he could get it back, and basically there was a match with Magnus. D'Lo offered to be his opponent. Bully Ray said, no, Doc's going to be the opponent. I want you to go down there with him and make sure he doesn't lose. Well, we all know how that turned out. Basically, D'Lo messes up again, accidentally trips Doc, causes him to match with Magnus. They bust D'Lo down, say he's no longer the vice president, he's a pledge now, so he has to clean their bikes, get them beer, do whatever they want. A decent match altogether. Nice to further on the Aces and Eights angle, which has been off and on for me. Some greatness, a lot of bad. Now, coming off of that, before we go further into the show, basically because our next thing's pretty much going to engulf most of what we're talking about. Our question of the week last week was, with Rob Terry being the monster now, did it hurt him for being a cartoon character so long, basically in his team with Rob E? We got an answer from our friend Mike Kerwan, 1237. Robbie T is a good wrestler, but the time with Robbie made him look a bit weak, and it's taken away from his monster character. My thoughts exactly on the situation. I wish they would have repackaged him, put him in some different gear, took him off of TV for a couple weeks and brought him back, a couple months and brought him back different. That being said, I am rather enjoying the matches he's putting on. He's grown his in-ring ability by leaps and bounds. I think he's 100% better than he was last year at this time, in my opinion. And I think I see a lot of upside in the guy. Now, do I see him as being the next, big world champion? Maybe not, but he could work his way there. I mean, he's worked his way up to the position he has, and kudos to the guy. I enjoy his matches. I enjoy him. I do agree that it hurts a little bit. I still associate him with the fist-bumping Robbie and Robbie T characters. Now, coming off of that, our question of the week for this week is going to be, as I said earlier, seeing the 3D, it's a move that I mark out for. What is the one move that you guys mark out for? Whether it be the 3D, whether it be the Styles Clash, the Stone Cold Stunner, Sweet Chin Music, the Ric Flair Chop, the Green Mist from Muda. Let us know what you think. Let us know what the move that makes you mark out every time you see it is. Hit us up on our Twitter, hit us up on Facebook. Put it down where? He's not here. I'm sorry, guys. Down there in the comments. No baseball bat, because that's his gimmick, and I don't steal gimmicks. Although I did just do the crotch chop. But anyway. Moving on from our questions. This is where the little bit serious part of the show comes in. I'm going to... Give me 1 second. I'm battling a little bit of a sore throat as well, guys, so I'm sorry if you guys see me drink a lot of soda here. Alright. We have the controversy of the week. If you guys did not see, Bobby Roode and Austin Aries were coming out to wrestle Bad Influence with James Storm as a referee. Christy Hemme mistakenly introduces Roode and Aries as Kaz and Daniels. Aries, whether it was part character or whether he was legitimately pissed off, backs Christy Hemme into the corner, makes her say their name right, and stands on the second rope, basically crotch in her face, raising his arms in victory. Now, she let off an uncomfortable laugh that I didn't notice on the live show. I honestly didn't. I really didn't think much of this until about a day or two later when I was reading a review by Mark Madden, who a lot of you guys are going to remember from being an announcer during the later days of WCW. He's a radio announcer in the Pittsburgh area, a sportscaster. He does some fantastic interviews with wrestlers. He's not afraid to ask the tough questions, which I always enjoy. That being said, he brings up the sexual harassment aspect of this, with Aries' crotch being in her face. Apparently, Christy Hemme said on her Twitter account that it was unacceptable what he did. Now, watching it live, my reaction, I didn't think nothing of it. It fit Austin Aries' character, in my opinion. Now, if she was uncomfortable, that's a different story altogether. I don't know how Christy Hemme feels. I don't know if she was playing that up as part of her character. I don't know if Austin, when he backed her in the corner, said, "This is what I'm going to do." And she said, "Okay, go with it." And then, like I said, played up her character later that he embarrassed her. Or maybe she got wind of it that people were upset, and that's when she got embarrassed. I'm on the opinion of this. When I watched it live, it didn't seem like a big deal to me. I've seen way worse, way more misogynistic things happen in wrestling. I've seen Vince McMahon make Trish Stratus crawl around and bark like a dog. I've seen Stephanie McMahon hosed down with beer. I've seen countless women pointed to by DX and told to take off their shirts. I've seen ECW crowds chanting, she's a crack whore, she's a skank, show us your tits. I mean, the wrestling business has a history of misogyny, and it has a history of sexual harassment. Now, do I think this was as bad as some of the things I mentioned? Probably not. So most of the things I mentioned were part of storylines that had to be okayed beforehand. This happened live. To me, it fit into Austin Aries' character, so I was not offended at all. Now, I'm not saying... Now, if Christy Hemme feels that she was sexually harassed, I'm not one to say she wasn't. If you put your crotch in somebody's face, you are stepping over a boundary. And I'm not condoning this in any way. I'm just saying this as a wrestling fan and how it seemed to me. Now, the uproar, I think, in my opinion, was stirred up mostly by Mark Madden's comments and a couple other people who also did, but he seemed to be the one really stirring it. And this is not laying blame on him. This is just an open, I'm giving you my opinion on the story. I'm not saying Aries was wrong. I'm not saying Hemme was wrong. I'm not saying Mark Madden was wrong. Apparently, it's come out today, from what I read, that Dixie Carter has said that Austin Aries has been reprimanded. Now, whether that's a fine, a suspension, some form of punishment, apparently he did go too far. If Christy Hemme was uncomfortable, then I agree. He definitely deserved to be punished. I wasn't uncomfortable, and that's just my opinion. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying he was wrong. I'm not saying he was right. This is not a black or white area. This is a gray area. I thought it fit into his character. If he offended her in any way, he deserves any punishment he gets. Especially if he didn't clear with her first. And that's my opinion on it. Now, going into the match, we actually had a really decent match, which has been overshadowed with that. Rude and Aries versus Bad Influence for the #1 contendership with James Storm as a referee. It ends up with Storm basically super kicking one guy from each team, thus giving us a non-ending, so no #1 contender, or both of them are #1 contenders. I've said it before on the show, and I know Gary has as well. They have 3 main tag teams on the show, Rude and Aries, Bad Influence, and Chavo and Hernandez, and they keep giving us different settings of the 3 teams, and it gets a little stale. The addition of James Storm added something to me. I wish they'd do more with Storm. I really wish he was one of the main guys going after Aces and Eights. They have history. But I do enjoy James Storm, and I like him in anything he does. I thought this decent match. I've seen better between them, honestly. But it was decent. Now, coming off of that, earlier in the night, Sting and Angle basically went and talked to Hulk Hogan, and Hulk Hogan says he has a surprise teammate for them, and they said, well, can we count on him? Hogan said, well, I'm almost certain he'll be here. They said, well, we can't count on that. We want to bring Magnus in. So they say that later on in the night, we get Magnus gets jumped by Aces and Eights, basically leaving Sting and Angle to go 2-on-3 later on. Now, coming off that, we had an in-ring segment, Kenny King and Chris Sabin. Kenny King basically started off praising Chris Sabin, telling him to tell a story about his injuries, how he's fought back. And then he gives him the belt and says, here, hold this. I want you to hold it one more time because you're never going to get it from me. Nice, decent thing. They do a little ruckus between the two. It's setting up a nice match. I think the third person's either going to be Sanjay Dutt or Petey Williams. I'm sorry, I can't remember which of the two is going to be the third in this match. But they had a nice setup with these guys. Hopefully they keep some kind of a feud going with them. I think Chris Sabin's absolutely a guy that can raise Kenny King up to the next level. Kenny King has been on a rocket ride to the top since he's entered TNA. He was a guy that was on a rocket ride to the top in Ring of Honor as well, and probably why TNA took him. Decent segment, not great. King's mic work was awesome. Sabin's was okay. Sabin's never been the greatest on the mic. His best qualities happen between the ropes in an actual match. Now we had the main event of the night. We had Aces and Eights represented by Bubba Ray and Devon and Mr. Anderson versus Angle and Sting. And initially it started off as just against them two. Aces and Eights gets the upper hand. As they're about to put Sting through a table, we hear some new music, and out comes Abyss. Now, to me, was this a huge surprise? No. Was it a surprise? Yes. 2 reasons. A, they didn't play Abyss's normal music. They played a new song for it. Also, I didn't expect it to be Abyss, honestly. I expected it to be somebody else, somebody outside they were bringing in to help with the war. Maybe King Mo, Crimson, any of these guys. I actually thought it was going to be Samoa Joe, seeing as Samoa Joe wasn't on the show as of yet, tying it in. Or even somebody outside of the company coming in to help out. Abyss comes down, hits his signature moves, cleans out the ring, gets the win, and TNA seems to get a little bit of an upper hand. Nice ending to the show. Reminded me of Bash at the Beach. A lot of this reminds me of NWO versus WCW storylines, which some ways is good, some ways is bad. Speaking of that, one of the main guys in the NWO are Hulk Hogan, Suburban Commando. That one's for you, Paul. Count of the week is 2. Two Suburban Commandos. Perfect for the Huckster, not too much overpowering the show. Sting and Angle took more time on the show. They did mostly of the glad standing, which didn't hurt as well because they were building up the main event. I thought it was a well put together show. Basically, I'm going to go right into the ratings. Now, if you watched our show before, you know we do a system of 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. A 1's a Garrett Bischoff, a 2's a Christian York, 3's a James Storm, 4's a Christopher Daniels, 5's a Kurt Angle. I'm going to go ahead and give this one a Christian York a 2. I did like the main event. I liked the big build-up all night. I liked Abyss returning. Other than that, the 3D was awesome. I loved the 3D, which led us to the question of the week for this week. Magnus and Doc was a decent match, nothing great. The tag match was good, nothing great. King Sabin interaction was decent at best. Ace's Nate's deal with D'Lo seemed... It was okay. I mean, it wasn't terrible. The Knockouts tag match was good. Basically, the saving graces to me are Abyss coming out, seeing 3D, and Root and Aries versus Bad Influence. Besides the controversy, anytime you put those 4 guys in the ring, 5 guys including James Storm, it's good to me. So overall, I give the show a Christian York. And basically, that's all I have to say about that. My name is George Coles, and this has been Heel Heat.